buzzing and flying, her booty bubbling. The thoughts I'm having about her booty be troubling. The way she's zooming and sweating, it got me mumbling. A booga booga, a wooga wooga, I'm bubbling. Her legs stopped working, I broke the whole back.
What's going on, guys? Phil here. Had an idea of a video that I wanted to do, and I'm kind of riffing my intro here. I have a lot of points and a lot of stuff written out for the actual arguments that I'm going to be discussing, but there was a video that you might have seen. It's going to be linked here, somewhere here. It's in the description. It's what this entire video is based around, and it's called Dear Elon. It's by Sam Hyde. If you haven't seen the video, I highly, highly, highly recommend checking out the entire video, watching it in its entirety before engaging with this piece. There will be clips and, a little bit of context given to some of the points. I will have clips in there of the most important, highlighted quotes and things like that. But the topics that we're going to be discussing in the video in of itself has a lot of nuance to it. There's a lot of things that you're going to want full context, you're going to want a full understanding, and you're going to want the depth of the arguments. There's a lot of transition points in the piece. It makes it much more entertaining, and it makes it a lot easier to follow for a casual viewer. But things, will be said, and then jokes will be made, and topics will change, and then things will be said again that harken back to what you already have been talking about. And if you're only getting the clips that I'm going to be using with no additional context, it might not give the full picture. So with that caveat being said, let's just break down some thoughts and opinions that I had on Sam Hyde's video. I never had really experienced Sam Hyde's political side at all. I knew of him basically as just a shit poster. He makes funny videos. He's a comedian. He was part of MDE or whatever it is with the realtor guy. I don't know. Funny guy. He's got some good sketches. He's been around on the internet forever, and that was really my only introduction to him before this piece. So I was very, very surprised at how articulate many of his points were, and very surprised at the internet's reaction to it, because it got both a lot of positive feedback, from people like me who had never really heard of him, and with anything that's going to be talking about the current political landscape, and especially when you just insert the fact that he's a notorious internet personality, and he's also a comedian, and so how much of what he's saying, even in a serious video, is he actually intending for you to take seriously? There's a lot of things that kind of conflict to have made this a really interesting video. Honestly, when I was watching it, it felt like it didn't feel like you're watching a YouTube video. It felt like you were watching something that you'd watch in school. It felt like something that you would get, you could have actual discussion about. We're talking about issues that matter and people that are real and actively influencing our lives. And it takes a certain amount of confidence and maybe a certain amount of hubris to think that your opinions are enough to just get you talking, and you can get you can get a group rallying around you, believing in what you're saying. And while you watch his video, he resonates very, very well with his audience. So yeah, anyways, with that small caveat out of the way, let's take some words from him and get started in reviewing Dear Elon.
I know as a comedian, first and foremost, I don't expect people to take me seriously, but it is a fact that shit posting and public opinion are now intermingled permanently, and it's not going anywhere, and that's just the way it is.
So, as podcasting and comedy have had a major breakout in the last few years, politics and shitposting have become permanently intertwined. It goes exactly with the quote that he just said, and it's a very poignant point to make extremely early on into this video. It sets the stage for the fact that while this is going to be a more serious video, and a lot of his opinions are obviously going to be things that he believes and cares about, that there's still a little bit of intrigue there. You're never quite sure how much is important, how much is just there for a joke, how much people are just giving credence to bits, things like that, letting people have some line to make jokes and things like that. But this becomes an issue when so many people in the public get their news and their opinions, and your breaking news is coming from memes. We don't sit around and we don't watch the news anymore. We don't seem to trust experts anymore. It's not enough to say, I've been in this field for 20 years, you should listen to what I have to say. That is something that we've lost. And instead, it's been replaced by comedian podcasts where we talk about politics and interview random guests. We watch Asmongold instead. You know, it's this kind of point that he's making of like, we are in a media landscape where serious, like, thoughtful analysis and like real meaningful conversation does not happen. And that should probably change a little bit. Who knows? It's just been interesting to see that the comedians are kind of the ones pushing the envelope as much as anyone else will. It's really interesting that that's become, you know, the alternative media. It used to be people like Alex Jones who spouted off on their own website and sold you horse pills or whatever. And instead, now it's like Joe Rogan with the biggest podcast ever also might still be selling you horse pills. Like, it's a very interesting point to start the video off with. And I think it, you know, it just establishes such an immediate baseline that everyone recognizes as true. It's like, yeah, we really are living in, you know, kind of the shitpost era. And so I just thought that that was a very important note to begin the conversation on in general, especially coming from the fact that he is a comedian. And so he has to make sure, like, hey guys, I am not just, you know, Andrew Schultz talking on a podcast here about politics. I'm here to sit down and have a real, actual, interesting and thoughtful discussion about what's going on right here. And so, very, very confident start.
Blanket banning Groypers, taking away blue checks, changing the algorithm of the site because 100 people ratioed you.
So one of the themes that's going to be coming up quite a bit throughout this video, and it's not something that I originally planned on having in this video. I didn't realize that this was such a talking point, or this was such a point of contention. Like I said in the beginning in my like kind of ad-libbed intro, I didn't have much experience with Sam Hyde politically before this, and a lot of his messaging, you know, it seems on the surface like a lot of just pro-nationalism kind of stuff, and a lot of, you know, free speech absolute, like, you know, it's very right-wing kind of normal points, but it's presented in a way that is very genuine, very real, and that's what initially, like, led me to think the video was really, really good. It turns out there's been some controversy, and he's had some stuff in the past about, like, having issues with white supremacy and trying to promote white supremacy. He's donated money to, like, a Nazi leader's stream thing. I really didn't get too bogged down in trying to figure out the history of it. Obviously, the internet calls people they don't like Nazis all the time. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. It doesn't matter where you're actually at on the political spectrum. That's just kind of like a catch-all term that we use. But especially like now with, you know, all the Elon salute things happening, and the fact that the AfD in Germany is getting like support and Elon supports them, like we really have to at least try to police ourselves with the words that we use, and only call people Nazis if they're actually trying to espouse like white supremacy and, you know, crazy ass bullshit like that. And there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of positive and negative backlash to this video. A lot of the negative backlash seems to have come from this idea that Sam Hyde cannot have any useful opinions because he is a Nazi. And that takes the idea, you have to accept at face value the claim that he is a Nazi in the first place. And then even if I take that claim at face value and say, I'm going into this video with the perspective that I'm watching a Nazi's point of view of this situation, he doesn't sound like a Nazi, guys. He's talking to you about race, and he's giving you examples about a bunch of different races. He very, like, obviously showcases this is not about specifically the Indians and the H1B situation. They're just a target because of the actual overarching issue. And, like, there's a lot of points where if you go into the video looking to just hear racist shit, you can pull out a lot of, weird sound bites or little clips. And if you watch the video with full context and full understanding of what the argument that he's actually making is, it falls apart so quickly, okay? There's a streamer and a YouTuber who I respect a lot, love his videos, love a lot of his points. He talks about great stuff in business and finance and marketing and a bunch of really, in industries that I have a lot of interest in for whatever reason. He's a very cool, chill dude, it seems like. My guy Atriok had a video that showcased a little bit of his opinions on this video. I'm sure he maybe talked about it on stream. I don't watch streams. I'm a YouTube rug. My bad. But in the highlight video, he explained that if you watch this video, 95% of it is honestly totally fine, normal politics, talking, good discourse, blah, blah, blah. And then there's 5% poison, and he's trying to get you to buy into what that his side believes, and then he's trying to influence you with some of these bad opinions to get you to, become a Nazi or whatever. I think it takes a very cynical point of view to go in expecting that. And maybe there's context that I don't know. Maybe he really does have a history that I'm discounting, and so people go into this with less of an open mind. But I went in where my initial exposure to this video was through subreddits with Destiny fans and Atriok and very left-leaning places that called him a Nazi specifically. So I went into the video thinking this is getting a lot of traction for what should be a video that's apparently about spreading Nazism. There's nothing of that to that extent in this video at all. So that was a big kind of tangential point, but it's going to come up and it's going to be a kind of reoccurring theme in this video. I'm still going to attempt to bring up the kind of examples that I've seen given of where white supremacist rhetoric might have came up, and I'm going to kind of combat it a little bit because I really don't think that if you read into what he's saying with a critical mind, that it really is trying to espouse these views. And I think that it's very disingenuous to the rest of his arguments to disregard what he's saying because of this. And so, yeah, with all of that said, my second point is about the fact that he got a little bit of shit for bringing up the Groyper ban so early on in the video. The Groyper ban, for those who don't know, I didn't really know a lot about it. I don't use Twitter. Apparently on Twitter, now X, whatever the fuck, there's a large group of white supremacists that are known as the Groypers that follow Nick Fuentes. Again, tangentially, I kind of know Nick Fuentes' name. I've seen him on, probably 2 or 3 Destiny streams before. And everybody under the sun is aware that Nick Fuentes is a fucking extremist, insane guy. That is not someone that you want to be associated with, right? And as far as I know, they don't really have much interaction, or really, I don't believe that Sam has much to gain from going to bat for the Groypers, okay? The Groyper ban comes up because a bunch of these people's Twitter accounts were removed verification and got their accounts banned and blah, 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 because they're yelling at Elon about the H1B situation. This, addressing this and defending this group at all somehow, I don't think he defends them really, but acknowledging that they are in fact real people and that their constituents, which Elon has now garnered through the MAGA base, you have to admit that they exist. They are people, and if you're trying to use your position to have power over America, they are part of the people that you just got to help get you into positions of power. So you have to still at least kind of give them, you got to at least give them the free speech place to talk, that's what they expected Twitter to be, right? Sam tries to gain sympathy for them, and he explains why blanket bans shouldn't exist on the platform of Twitter in just in the general case, and then reapplies this to the Groypers in the specifics. But Elon's idea of Twitter is that it should be the internet's marketplace of ideas. It should be the town center in the middle of Rome where everyone comes and screams about what they want to believe, and then you can listen to them or you can't. And so if that's the case, and that can be, you know, an understandable goal to aspire to for your platform. If that's the case, you have to accept the fact that you're going to have Nazis on your platform, man. Like, it might be a hard pill to swallow, and it's not one that you want to swallow if you're not, you know, a white supremacist. But if that's what you're trying to do, and especially if you're garnering the support of them by being so politically involved with them, and then again with his, you know, ties to the German far right group, it's very weird for you to place a blanket ban on a bunch of high profile accounts just for, like, quote, their beliefs. Obviously, it's I don't want to just keep saying, like, hey man, you got to let Nazis on your platform, because that's not an argument I really want to defend, but it's one that you've set up for yourself, dude. If you want to be the free speech platform, you got to let people be fucking pretty vile, man. Like, it's those kinds of ideas are able to get more traction when they're not, like, addressed by anybody. If you're able to go and talk to a bar full of 10 guys who don't have the internet, and you say, hey man, white supremacy is pretty cool, you have a way higher chance and likelihood of actually convincing them of that than if they could go and talk to other people and say, hey, I think this, or I heard this, can someone tell me why it's wrong? You know, like, you have to have open communication channels. And if that's what Twitter's supposed to be, then even though a lot of people will give you points because, yeah, man, you're banning the right people, it's not the stance that you want to take for your platform. So that's an interesting point. It also becomes a larger point, and I want to focus in on it a little bit extra. Where exactly do the Groypers fall into the MAGA base? Is it a real, you know, kitty cat? Is it a real stretch to say that some of the Groypers, or the Groypers in general, are part of the MAGA base? Do they actually have the same goals? Do they actually, do the Groypers actually like Trump? The answer is yeah, but there's a good exercise to be taken in where does the kind of line, where are the lines drawn between your normal MAGA group people that are going to see this and not care about the fact that Elon is going after, you know, part of the right? Like, at what percentage of the Groypers are the MAGA base do you have to get at where it becomes you're attacking the full right, not just the alt-right? You know what I mean? I think that's an important aspect to it that's really difficult to have any, like, data on. It's really hard to know for sure how many of the Trump supporters are actually supporters of this kind of shit too. Like, I don't know. I think that's an important point to at least bring up, though. The Republican base is in such a weird spot in our current climate, because you have, like, traditional conservatives that are trying to separate from Trump. You have all the Trumpers. You have all the, you know, you have, like, the alt-right people who are kind of attaching to Trump because they think they have a better chance under him, because they do, but that's not it might not be particularly because of the figurehead. It might just be because of, I don't know. I'm giving a lot of leeway there because it's not something I've looked into a lot. It's not something that I think is extremely relevant, but I do think it matters for these kinds of conversations. We're talking about very nuanced points. We're talking about things that are very intangible, you know? And so it becomes a little bit abstract to talk about and think about sometimes, but I hope that my points are getting across here, that at least there is something to be said on either side of this argument. And if you look at it from Sam's a Nazi, he's going to defend Nazis, obviously you can extrapolate that, but you can also very easily look at it kind of objective and say, hey, he's on the free speech platform defending the idea of being the free speech platform. And it's all posed in a kind of question to Elon of, like, are you okay with this? Like, you can decide which world we live in for Twitter. Are we the free speech place where you allow this kind of shit? Or is it going to be policed kind of like, a normal social media would? And the answer is okay either way, but you have to make an answer. People are angry because there is no consistency and there's no communication. Moving forward, I would read into this situation and this example that he uses as more of a criticism of Elon's handling of the situation, regardless of the target, rather than taking it as Sam is defending the Groypers. I don't think he's defending the Groypers. I think just by addressing it, he has to say, like, the Groypers exist and they kind of deserve to exist. Like, is it really, like, I don't know, is it really bad to say that Nazis still probably deserve to exist? I don't know, okay? But I think I'm okay saying that. I think I'm comfortable saying that, and I think Sam is comfortable saying that too. And so instead, the criticism is towards Elon's handling and whether the ban goes beyond the values that you stated wanting for the company, So it's kind of just like an anti-censorship take, which I think falls into Sam Hyde's like repertoire of ideas way more than a defense of the alt-right would fall into his sense of ideals. So that's my diatribe on the Groyper situation coming up very early.
This 2014 Prius, that's a hot little car. I think I might need to fuck this car.
Now we get into the actual juicy stuff, okay? So the video is all about the H1B Visa situation, or at least that's how it's presented to start as. And it turns more into a conversation about nationalism and foreign policy and immigration policy, and what it turns into a very kind of esoteric talk about what do we want our America to look like? What is wrong with the America that we have today compared to the one that we were promised growing up? Those kinds of arguments. So those are going to be the things that we're going to be focusing on the most, and it's going to be particularly viewed through a kind of right-wing perspective. Obviously, Sam Hyde is going to be, I would say he leans more right-wing a little bit. He's not like crazy either way from what I can tell. Again, crucify me in the comments, tell me how I'm wrong. I would love to be able to find more context on him. I did quite a decent amount of like research and looking into stuff, but it is very difficult when you're trying to figure out the history of someone who's been around for like 10, 15 years, and you can't exactly trust what the internet has to say on people. So if you want to take the time and send me some context and some arguments, that's cool. I would love to see what's going on, what I missed. But with that said, we are into the first real point that I'd like to talk about, and this is what I call the argumentative split. And this is where you're going to see Sam split the normal Republicans, the like normal MAGA base, and then or separate the traditional Republicans from this new kind of MAGA base, right? He's trying to get you away from center, kind of, but it's more just explaining the shift in the feelings of a lot of right-wing people right now, okay? Or at least this is his claim. The claim is that the boomer conservatives, like the normal Republicans, they have an idea of America that you could classify as a collection of ideas. America is being not actually very rooted in the physicality and like, hey, this is our home. It's a lot more of, this is a place with a set of values that we offer to everybody. That kind of sits, like it resonates in theory with me going into the argument. And so I'm going to have a slight bias towards this idea, but Sam rejects this idea, okay? He claims that the MAGA base does not agree in seeing America in these kind of abstract terms. It's not an intangible set of values. We are not a collection of ideas. Instead, thinking like this has actually led us to be weaker because we have a society that is much more, open to letting a lot of people in, come to America because this is what Americans believe. There's not a lot of nationalism Instead, there's trying to like kind of be a utopia when we're not in a time where we're capable of being a utopia, I believe is the main crutch of the argument. Okay, he says all this that it stems from weak immigration policy, allowing foreigners to become such a large portion of the American population and like landscape, and not just the fact that we have a lot of immigrants, but very importantly that it actually is caused by the fact that the immigrants that we do let in do not assimilate like as they should, kind of. Essentially, by having the idea that America is just a collection of ideas, we don't have a lot of our own actual culture. And so it's very difficult to have people assimilate and not just kind of make their own sects. Like we have, you have like your neighborhood where black people live, you have your neighborhood where the Mexican people live, you have Chinatown in all the big cities, like things like that. That is a way of looking at America where everyone came, we still have our little kind of like sects, kind of like we have the states, but we're all here with the premise that we're here because of like our rights and our freedoms and blah, 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 blah. Sam is saying that we should not think like that, and instead that we should be like more pro-nationalist by not allowing that like separation of ourselves to happen by just not having immigration in the first place. Is kind of a simplified variant of what he's saying. A lot of the criticism that Sam gets for this, I don't think is rooted in, like, a lot of the criticism he's getting is rooted in the fact that this way of thinking is racist. And I can definitely see the logical steps there, right? You're being anti-immigration. You're saying that the people who come here aren't doing what they should, aren't, you're talking down to people that have come here because they're different and they haven't actually, they haven't congealed into what you think an American should be. And that's what this all comes down to, is what is an American. But anyways, the idea for him is that this isn't actually rooted in any racism towards a group. It's rooted in a sense of nationalism and a sense of attempting to keep like the legacy of America that he grew up believing intact. And then he thinks that foreign policy and immigration policy threatens that ideal. So like I said, there's going to be a lot of having to kind of think in two paths about a lot of these points. The main crutch is that foreign policy, labor policy, immigration policy has made America weaker. The stem from that is we have a lot of immigrants who drive down like wages and drive down whatever else in the argument. And then that leads to Sam doesn't think that America's a collection of ideas. I put more credence into that rather than Sam is racist, we don't like immigrants, we need to get rid of immigrants because I don't like immigrants. There's a lot more nuance to his point, and even if you believe... Excuse me. We're trying to talk politics here. Even if you want to just believe that it's racist, I think that there's an argument underneath some of the more loaded rhetoric. And that's the thing about this video that really like sticks in my mind. It made me keep thinking about this. It's talking about issues that rhetorically, if you just saw a lot of the quotes, you just read the words, you don't take time to understand the intentionality and the meaning and the subtlety of it all, you get completely different points. And I believe that because this video is complex and talks about such abstract ideas of things that like the normal American never sits down and thinks about this, okay? No one else is sitting here for 10 hours pondering whether Sam is racist or Sam has a good idea behind this point. It's just not how we function. And so I'm hoping that by me going through this effort, there's at least a general idea with people that watch this, that at least we're able to talk about complex issues without just saying, like, screaming at each other that you're wrong or that you're racist or that this is why I can't believe you. I'm willing to take the steps and like walk off the plank a little bit with you and be like, okay, if your argument hinges on this fact, let's start with the idea that this fact is true, whether it is or not, and you drive me down the argument, and I'll see if I can like attack your argument, whether your initial claim is true or not. There's just a lot of steps and a lot of nuance and a lot of important conversations that can come from this video and from a lot of the points that he's making, that I believe a lot of people get stuck up in the minutia of the fact that we are going to be talking about race. Like, it's so much deeper than I don't like other people.
Once in a while, hey, you know what? I think I like that guy. Now, he's got to be deported. Sucks, man. And he's not being deported because of the color of his skin. He's being deported for the content of his character.
On Indian hate, Sam uses a perfect example here. Vivek's, like, relative irrelevance to the Republicans showcases how his argument against the H1B system is not rooted in nonsensical racism, the entire point that we just made an argument for, right? Rather, the H1B argument serves as the catalyst for this whole discussion on whether the ideas that we have for foreign workers, immigration policy, etc., if we bring in these foreign workers to the country, are they actually cohesive with American fundamentals, or are they just here because it's a job or it's better than where they were? You're always going to have you can't stop people from trying to escape other situations, and we should be open to letting people in, at least in some respect, for really no reason. If I want to go to Switzerland and I want to move, I'm sure I have to apply. I'm sure I got to do some paperwork, but I bet you they're willing to probably take me in. And we should be that kind of nation, I think. The argument is that even if that's the case, is there extra steps that we should be taking to kind of ensure that people, once they're here and they're going to be here permanently, they understand what makes America so special, so different? Yeah, man, you might have just come here because where you're from is horrible. But if you're going to stay here, there are certain things that are expected. There are certain things that you know, no one's saying you got to kick out everyone that doesn't agree with you, but there has to be some sort of decorum and understanding of base values. I can get that argument a little bit, okay? Being a citizen is more than simply passing a trivia test about some laws and some history. It encompasses getting accustomed and fully integrated into society, and this is something that Sam addresses as not happening as much as it should. There is minimal hate towards Indians because of their Indianness. Rather, they're just the current target because of the H1B situation, okay? Sam might be harboring anger towards the poor systems that are in place, or the fact that America offers this H1B thing in principle, or it could just be that he's upset with the fact that it's being abused or it's not being used in the way that it was meant to be being used. Whether or not he believes any of that, either of those paths, the issue that he has is not with individual workers who are taking advantage of the system, and it's not with Indians as an entire race, okay? It's much less important, the fact that we're talking about Indian people, than the fact that we are talking about immigration in general.
You have to at least say that the H1B program is being scammed If you don't admit that, then as far as like any type of discussion that goes anywhere is concerned, it's over. It's over.
And although we are not talking about the H1B situation exactly specifically, let's address the H1B situation. Sam makes a few points claiming that it's not about exceptional Indians, and he claims that the H1B system is being abused to get low-skill, low-wage workers to then undercut the average American jobs and, you know, make it more difficult for the average American to get paid what they deserve to be getting paid, a living wage. He uses this argument that they're just getting Indians to run our gas stations, which is, you know, yeah, it takes some skills and some understanding of management to run a gas station, but it's not a high-skill job that you definitely could not teach an American to do, okay? The system, the H-1B system, it's meant to be used to be getting high-paying, exceptional workers in situations or fields where it isn't feasible for a company to find domestic talent, okay? In either case, if that's what it's supposed to be being used for, whether it's being abused or not, the system should probably be revised to have at least a higher minimum salary requirement, okay? A lot of the argument that Sam and people critical of the H-1B program make is that it's being abused, and instead of, you know, they don't even have a good example, because the example is to use tech, because that's where H-1B is being used the most, is to get tech workers. But then they're also saying that you could teach Americans to code, that there's Americans that don't have coding jobs and stuff like that. And that's probably also true to an extent. But the bigger picture is that the H-1B system is just a system that is fundamentally flawed in Sam's view. It should not exist because it goes against the typical American. And there's very, very few use cases where it is actually applicable, unless the use cases are the ones where it's being abused, which they claim is a majority of them right now. Okay? That's the argument. The argument is that H-1B is bad, H-1B is being abused, and from that, even if it wasn't being abused, I think we should get rid of H-1B. That's the idea. All of that hinges upon the fact, or on the claim rather, that the H-1B visa system is being used to steal gas station level jobs from American workers, okay? From my research, and same caveat, somewhat limited research, it's hard to figure things out sometimes. Maybe I'm wrong. Send me what you think. From what I've found, I have not found particularly credible data that the H-1B system is being used to steal low-paying average American worker jobs, okay? You can apply for one even if you don't meet the requirements. So there's a database that I found on some website where you can see a bunch of applications that have been previously submitted, approved, or denied. And a lot of the ones where it's low-paying jobs that shouldn't be used for the system, they get denied. And on some of the Twitter threads that I saw, people were using pictures of these kinds of stats and these kinds of claims saying, look, this is what they're using the system for. That shit got declined. That shit got rejected. It's basically like saying the people that call the ICE tip line and sing the mariachi song at them, that's reliable data. That is not how that does not track. Okay? So, from what I've seen, the minor roles, the small jobs that they're stealing with the H-1B system, that claim, it does not really have any legs to stand on.
Whoa! Whoa! And you see this has a pattern to it, almost like a beautiful rose. It's almost like a beautiful rose.
Anyways, I believe that although the catalyst for this video was the H-1B situation, and it gets brought up a couple times, and we make points about it, obviously, the actual H1B system in of itself is not that big of a factor. Should we get rid of it? Should we revise it? Yeah, I'm fine either way. I'm good with proposals to do either. Because honestly, I don't believe that there's that many jobs that you can't teach an American to do. We're just as exceptional as the Indians, Elon. You can teach someone to do whatever you want them to do. But the implication of this situation and the fact that it like spawned this video and these conversations is really good, I think. I believe that the larger topics and broader themes of American nationalism versus racism and the discussion on what it means to be an American and these kinds of things that are brought up are much more interesting and nuanced topics to cover. And therefore, after this, I don't believe I'm going to be referencing the H1B situation almost at all. So this will be it on the H1B argument, hopefully.
Now here's the thing about me that's a secret that most people don't know. I'm borderline retarded. And I can't read. These books that you're recommending,
Goethe.
I would pick that up and I would be like, 10 minutes later, I'd be like, what's my favorite song? The ABCs?
Moving on from the H1B argument, instead we have a conversation on Ben Shapiro's America, and this harkens back to the idea of the BoomerCon right collection of ideas, right? This is a more expanded section on that. America is not a collection of ideas. America is a people. On the surface, this is a very easily digestible, nationalistic sounding message, right? However, one of the lines in particular has been getting him some flack for potentially being white supremacist leaning with the messaging. The split from what would normally be the like allied right-wing view on the collection of ideas America versus his proposed kind of cultural identity argument could express more willingness to allow white supremacist like feelings and support to foster in his group because they're going to be more alienated from the typical conservatives. And he is saying, I do not agree with the typical conservatives. So he's been accused of like trying to kind of invite the white supremacists to come join his idea and posing the rest of the right, like the old traditional conservatives and their ideas as the counterpoint, when typically the counterpoint for a right-wing political ideology would be a left-wing political ideology. But he's specifically drawing like lines in the sand between conservative groups, and so he's been getting some shit for that. And I don't really think that this holds a lot of water. I don't actually think that he is inviting the white supremacists into his group. I think he's just explaining his beliefs and explaining that, you know, there is this overarching sense that Republicans believe everyone believes like this on their side, and there's a large portion of their base that does not believe in this at all, that actually finds it, you know, very antithetical to the America that they believe that they should have. And that's really, I think that's very interesting, because it's something that I don't believe a lot of people will have faced head on as a thought until being addressed with it here. There is also the line that he says is America is a people. And that's been read into as kind of like a dog whistle of like America is a white people nation, or like you can look at an American and see that it's an American, or like some sort of argument extrapolating from that idea. And I think that there is a very massive difference between saying America is a people and America is white people. I don't believe that he would make this choice of words if he was trying to espouse a white supremacist like narrative. There is like America is a people. We have a way of thinking. We have culture. We have ways that we speak. We have ways that we talk. We have ways that we walk. We're the only country where people lean against fucking walls at the bar for no reason. Like, there's just that. I'm not saying that those are the things that make you an American, but those are examples that just show you that there are ways that you assimilate. There's ways you can tell who understands or who has been in America for a long time and is trying to like kind of fit in, trying to adopt the overall understanding of how this society works. It might be because I haven't traveled. It might be because I've only lived in America. But the biggest like kind of nuance to grasp in this argument of whether people are like assimilating enough or not is to think like this. If I was to go to Finland and Finnish culture says that you have to be that everyone's really quiet and we go to bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you never raise your voice. And then I am like, oh, cool. I want to go move to Finland. I'm going to apply. I'm going to pass all the tests. I now live in Finland. Oh, I don't want to follow any of these like cultural norms or rules. Like, I can understand people getting resentful over that. Am I saying that every single person needs to follow every single little rule ever put in place and every little social faux pas or whatever? No. But there is some reality behind the argument that you if you are trying to become a national of another country, the onus is on you to kind of change yourself around that. And Sam is arguing that that is okay and should be more normalized. Whether or not that is how you believe, that's at least the argument. And that's an argument that I don't believe a lot of people actually got from the messaging. I think that a lot of people got caught up on bullshit arguments when there is actually like an interesting argument to be had underneath all the layers of shit. So, yeah. This piggybacks onto his next point, where human beings are not interchangeable economic units, okay? Quote, no one is solving the Japanese baby problem by turning Japan into India. Now, that, again, it's loaded with racial rhetoric, and some people just couldn't get past the fact that we're talking about things that involve races. While your gut reaction might be that this is an intensely kind of like racist sentiment or rhetoric, the point itself is actually a very good question, okay? In a world where Japan is about to they have no kids, so their elder population is going to just basically be dying off with no one to take care of them, why would they not just import a bunch of foreigners to help sustain their country? And the answer highlights the difficulties in talking about these kinds of subjects, right? Because it just comes down to the fact that there is something that makes each country and each culture very distinct, right? You can't just take person A, human A, from culture B or from culture A and put it into culture B with humans that have always been in culture B and just expect everything to work out exactly as if that person was human A from group A in the first place. It's just not how the world works. The first quote about the Japanese problem, it's a very digestible take, and it really kind of forces at you like, hey, here's a question that you do not want to answer because you're going to think that your first answer is like racist and shitty. But the fact that that is such a gut answer for so many people, there has to be some actual, there has to be something real there that is not just hate, not just racism, not just bullshit. Why isn't Japan just bringing in immigrants to fix the birth rate problem is a question that Sam is really hoping that he can get you to agree with him on. Because if he can get you to agree with this, if he can get you to be in the mindset of these kinds of questions and this kind of line of thinking of, I need to really understand what I'm being asked and understand kind of the depth of the answer that I'm giving. He's hoping that if he can get you with this question that has a very visceral, like easy answer, then he can lead you further down the road of his other arguments that take more complex routes. And this is kind of like the easiest entry point into, if you don't understand what I'm saying yet, or as of now, if you understand this argument, then we can at least move forward. You have a base of understanding of where he's coming from.
The only people who want to fix the American birth rate problem by turning America into India are fuckers. People are not interchangeable economic units. If they're not more than that, then that's just an extension of antinatalism. That's just nihilism. That's just people don't matter.
So, if Sam was able to lead you down this far, then here is where all of that kind of like battering you up, getting you used to the idea of him having like good points and understanding what's going on, all of that is to try to get you to believe in this next point. The only people wanting to solve America's birth rate problem by turning us into India are fuckers. While I can understand and relate to many of Sam's points, and I can see the logic in his, structured argument, the entire argument ends up hinging on this idea of Americans being a people. That this cultural difference and cultural shift is extremely fundamental to what makes an American an American, and that there is something to be said that it's very difficult to have other people assimilate into that, right? He disagrees with Ben Shapiro and the traditional right collection of ideas theory that he presents. And I disagree with him on disagreeing with the collection of ideas. So this is the point where I now have followed his argument coherently and understanding everything he's been saying, and he has now hit me with a point where I cannot agree. Okay? I found myself questioning it a lot while I made this video, while I've rewatched this video and thought about everything I was going to say, right? And although Sam makes some really good points, and he can reach some similar conclusions to what I actually believe at the end of the day too, I do believe in Shapiro's collection of ideas, America. At least, in the very least, more so than Sam's cultural identity, America. I grew up in a time when the public sentiment being fostered about what America is that it was the most free, the most humane, the most idyllic country that has ever existed. It's a country who fought itself over figuring out its own morals. It's a country who was born from fighting for injustice for, normal people. Taxation without representation and all that jazz. I believe in the democratic system and trying to live up to the standards that are set by this collection of ideas that's kind of presented within the Constitution, within the First Amendments, the Bill of Rights, that kind of stuff. America is a country grounded upon the ideas of free speech mattering, free expression mattering, and every person, being judged instead of by their skin color, but by their character. These values I find paramount to our society and why it functions so well. And while I don't think that Sam would disagree with any of those points, the idea that free speech is important, the idea that you should be able to say what you want to say, and I don't think that he would ever come out and say, oh no, I actually don't think, Indian people have rights. I do think that where we diverge is when it comes to how foreign policy, immigration policy intertwines with this collection of ideas, okay? I think that there's an aspiration that is very deeply rooted in American culture, in the American zeitgeist, in the psyche. And it's kind of exemplified by the Statue of Liberty and the little message and the poem that it has on it. It's this idea that we welcome the desperate and we hope that they will prosper. Those are words that Sam used particularly when describing this kind of feeling. And while it may lead to, situations where we have this H1B system that is potentially being abused, I believe that that is an aspiration that my government should maintain. This brings up an idea of intentionality versus results, which is a point that Sam addresses later on. And although we both end up falling more into the results matter camp, I would say that I also believe that your results and what actually comes of, decisions matters more than what you intended to happen when you made the decision. I think that these issues that can be caused with foreign and immigration policy, like juxtaposing that with the idea and the aspiration of wanting to be this place where we're still open to helping those who are in need. I think that the H1B situation presents itself as a much larger threat to American way of life for Sam than it does to someone like me. I believe that the biggest issue in him gaining more support off of this idea particularly is that I don't think there's many people like him when compared to the amount of people who are like me, who, even if in a specific situation like right now, there are issues that have come from immigration and foreign policy, I don't believe that it is as great of an issue as he does. And I think that with the amount of force that he wants to have it change in the other direction, I think that would be antithetical to the kind of foreign policy aspiration I would hope that America maintains.
You're all about being pro-natalism and increasing the birth rate. Why is the average dude going to want to have kids when he can barely afford to live by himself and eat Domino's?
Anti-nihilism and facing reality. People do care. The world cares. And we aren't all just pawns. Sam has an anti-nihilistic take on the world, and he's reassuring his audience that they are not incapable of change or purpose, that their voices matter, that the fact that he made this video and has all of these people on Twitter to kind of thank for stoking the flames and like making this argument so big and pushing the issue, this is a very good thing. This instills hope in the hopeless. It's a great messaging tool, and it really helps to ensure that he's resonating with his audience, and it increases the kind of comfortability, the familiarity that they feel with his arguments, even if they haven't been met with those arguments before. Just the fact that he is presenting himself as like a genuine, like caring, positive person makes it much easier to digest what he's going to try to present to you. Being in a world where people were just a unit would make solving problems much easier, but we are not in a world that functions like that. This is played as a positive, and I wholeheartedly agree that it is a positive, and it's then used to address that a world where people were just units, that would strip people of their humanity. This act of stripping people of their humanity, separating themselves from actually being a person and they are just a unit, that is one of the first signs of authoritarianism, okay? Combating authoritarianism, bringing this point up to the surface, making sure it's directly addressed and not just ends up being like speculated and talked about in comments and stuff, that would be very odd for someone to bring up if they're trying to espouse for white supremacy. Because white supremacy would be an ideal much easier to accomplish and implement under authoritarianism. The fact that Sam directly addresses some of the concerns that he has with how the other people can see the world, how Elon potentially sees Americans, and how they're trying to interchange Indian people with American people. It starts to just kind of break down. It's the beginning of making people think that they are nothing but just a person with no purpose. And that is one of the quickest ways to have authoritarianism take over, is when people are so desperate and so hopeless that they don't even care what's going on anymore. Sam presents a really entertaining bell curve example where the lower 25 section is stupid, mentally handicapped people, and even they are able to address the fact oh my god, everyone's special, we love everybody. And then on the very, very far side, you have the geniuses who are everyone is so unique in their own way, and it depends exactly if you're not in this space in this exact moment for this exact reason, then someone else's life is different because of this and this and this. Everyone on those sides understands every single person is special. Every single person has a reason to be here. There's a purpose. There's something going on. Everyone is different. Everyone is unique. And then you have people in the middle who are trying to espouse the fact that humans are just humans. We're just an animal. We're just a number. We don't have anything that separates us from another one. Even humans that live 50,000 miles away on a different continent, and that, to contrast that example with the uplifting worldview that he just got done talking about, he addresses the poor average American experience right there. He's presenting a reality that we're going towards that people might not realize we're going towards, where our uniqueness and autonomy over our own decisions and what's going on in our life is potentially being infringed upon. And you need to understand that this is a reality that you can change, that you can affect by, rallying, talking, supporting, doing political outreach, whatever the fuck you want to do. He then, addresses the poor average American experience of being kind of downtrodden. You're a hardworking person, but right now you're on the ropes almost due to really no fault of your own. You have done what you've been told to do as you grew up. You went to school, you found a job, you do a business that's functionally very important to America, and yet you can't make it by. You can't afford to live alone. You can't afford to buy a pizza. That is a really scary thought, and something that I don't believe people in the class of Elon understand is a really big issue for a majority of the American public, for a majority of the people that they're supposed to be garnering support from, and the people that are pissed off at him when this video was made.
Hey, why isn't China importing infinity Indians right now? If it's such a huge economic advantage, why isn't China doing it?
The Chinese Boogeyman. This is personally my favorite section of the entire video. I don't believe it's the most impactful or the most important, but I do believe that it directly addresses a few points that I've kind of thought about for a long time, but I've never really been able to put into words, have never really been faced with enough of a reason to think about, and this video provided that reason. Is it really worth to compete with China? Why do we need to compete with China on absolutely everything? And is it worth it to compete when, to compete with China, we are competing with slave labor? We are literally competing with factories that use child labor. We're running against sweatshops where people work 18 hours a day. We're competing against people. Like the Chinese have Uyghur slaves that they use as free labor. Like, that's not something that the average American citizen should be thinking about competing against. We as a society have decided that these are things that are not allowed. These are things that are not moral, are not reasonable. And so if it means that we take a hit in production or a hit in, overall GDP so that some stupid fucking number doesn't go up, at least we know that in our country, kids aren't dying in factories and we don't have slavery anymore. We're supposed to be 200 years past that, and we were kind of like, I don't know, we're kind of the pioneers of getting out of slavery. So maybe we should not be competing with people who do barbaric practices that we don't do anymore. These type of questions, this idea of, do we need to always be mass competing with the entire world? We're supposed to be a superpower. Sure, you have to put in a lot of work to get there, but the amount of work we're doing isn't going to really be tracked in number of hours or, length of shifts or shit like that. It's going to be tracked by the accomplishments that we make. If our smartest people can get us to space and work, 20 hours a week, fucking let them do it. Why do we, when we're already placed so highly in the world stage, why do we need to continue to ferociously compete against places that don't, like, I mean, I can't say that China doesn't do anything. China's very important. China makes a lot of our shit. It's very, obviously economically and world, impactful, but there are things worth giving up extra productivity for. And the fact that instead of ever attempting to have an overall goal where we kind of get the world on the same page, that we don't use slaves or something, instead to be thinking along the lines that we need to just compete with the people who still do that, I think is a fundamental shift that should change. There's nothing that we gain from competing with China directly. Instead, what we lose is sense of security almost in America. If we always have a competitor who is doing it better or faster or cheaper than us, then the American people are led to believe that we have to do things quicker, cheaper, for more money or for less money. We have to keep rolling because otherwise they're going to end up beating us on the world stage. They aren't. And even if they do, we don't always have to be number one in every single aspect. We should be happy with our position where we're at and understand that what got us here is the ideas that stop us from, having slave labor. I've noticed an issue with a lot of me talking through these arguments is I feel like I'm able to explain my points well, but then my conclusions come back to just the same rhetoric. And so it feels like we just go in circles. And so I hope that even though I don't have a solution for that in the current moment, I hope that following my thought process and the lines of thinking, you're able to piece together what I'm trying to say, because there's a really, really important question underneath all of this, which is it really worth it to always be competing? Can we not just take care of ourselves? Can we not just invest in ourselves? Can we not just go at our own pace and make sure that our people are happy and fed and care about their job? There are things worth giving up, the stock going up or the GDP rising a little bit quicker. Our life is not run by numbers, and China has been the boogeyman saying, ooh, the numbers are looking bad for as long as I have fucking been alive. And it sounds like from Sam, from as long as Sam has been fucking alive. And China's never been us. So why do we want to try to compete to be China?
We have to have more legal immigration, or you, the person disagreeing with it, you want America to fail for your own personal gain. What personal gain are you talking about? You want America to fail for your own personal gain. What is, Elon, what are you talking about? How does anybody personally gain from this? The only gain happening is in stock prices of tech companies. That's the gain.
What is winning? There is no one gaining, Elon. We all suffer for share prices to go up. What does winning actually mean? Societies need a shared ideology, heritage, history, beliefs, values, or they collapse. This all results in a social cohesion that has been lost in recent times. This rhetoric could be overanalyzed. That was a quote from Sam. It could be overanalyzed in ways that suggest that the values in question that Sam thinks that we are missing are ones with racist histories or sentiments. But if you just look at his words objectively, he is not all that wrong about social cohesion and the fact that it is an incredibly important factor in the maintenance of a society. If it erodes too much, the society becomes functionally obsolete because you will eventually reach a point where you have competing societies, competing ways of thought working against each other in close proximity. Do I think that we're at that point in America? By far, no. And do I think it's a little bit scary for him to have this kind of messaging? And this is like, he seems to actually be worried that we're really losing our sense of Americanism. I disagree, but I understand where his argument is coming from, and we have to recognize there's a large portion of Americans who believe this way, and you're never going to get through to them by saying you're wrong. You have to change how you're thinking. What we have to do is we have to understand and really truly get where they're coming from to be able to find ways to then explain, like, hey, you might be right on this, you could be right on this. You're able to get concessions and move goalposts and like actually change how people think rather than just trying to reprogram them overnight. This is a societal shift that I was not aware might be an issue, might be something that needs to be addressed. But it seems like if Sam's point of view is as popular as, say, this video that he made is, if a lot of people agree with this sentiment, it's something that needs to be addressed by the people who don't agree with it. There's obviously something that we're all missing. There's a miscommunication. There's a roadblock somewhere in our lines of thinking where we don't end up at the same conclusion. And there should be a way to have a meaningful conversation about it and figure out what the differences are. So I think that out of really almost anything that Sam says in this video, this might be the most incorrect. Okay, the idea that societies need this like super shared heritage and history and belief system. I don't think you need that. I think what is important is that you have values and that you have just people more willing to have a bit more push and pull. There are things that you can believe in. There are things that you can disagree about while still maintaining a there's a word, I just had it. Like, we can all agree on a baseline of we need this like kind of social cohesion. We need everyone to kind of live by these standards. And then there's a lot of push and pull from that baseline, but we need to all at least be on a baseline. And if the baseline includes this heritage and history and beliefs, then that could potentially infringe upon people's like religious freedoms. That could infringe upon any sort of immigration, because when you start to bring heritage and history into it, and that's a requirement, then you're excluding outsiders. And I don't believe that America should be a fully exclusionary state.
Oh, you know it, lad. You know that, Hassan Piker. I'm coming to kill you in Los Angeles at your house.
Or in the ring.
No, in real life.
Some things are unquantifiable, and the world isn't reduced to math. Mount Rushmore, the interstate, the space program. These dream projects and the values behind them are what America is lacking. Quote, "We don't need more code bases. We don't need more gadgets. We do not need these workers." That was Sam in reference to bringing in a bunch of the tech guys from the H1B system. And these tech guys, in theory, are actually what the system is kind of meant for. Like I said, the minimum requirement right now is like $140,000 salary. And whether or not you could teach an American to do that job and get paid the same, or if you have to teach them and pay them more, like whether anything in practicality is different. America needs leaders willing to fight for the American people and not corporations that are solely profit driven. Okay, we need people that are willing to fight not just for the ideas that make America great, but for America to actually continue to be great, and for the American public to be a strong unit. There's this aspect to society that a lot of people I don't think about at all in their day-to-day, but it's very similar to kind of how I don't think a lot of people think of this when they're thinking of getting a job or thinking of work. Okay, you might be an American, but America has to do a lot to keep you an American. There are a lot of things that the American government does and says they believe in and says that they'll protect that make you want to stay in America and be an American. This is the kind of mindset that we need our economic leaders to adopt. Rather than being purely for profit, we need people like Andrew Carnegie, who he's old as shit. Everyone knows who he is, I hope. Maybe I'm too out of touch. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe young people don't get taught about him anymore. He came up in history books when we were kids. He made like a bajillion fucking dollars way back when no one had any fucking money. Okay? And then he went and he built libraries throughout the entire fucking country because he thought education was so important. He believed that he got an education from libraries, and that's how he was able to make so much money. And so one of the programs he did was he made a fucking million libraries, and he donated to communities all throughout the fucking all throughout America. Carnegie is a big name in New York. I think he has a theater or a hall. He probably fucking donated that to get the arts going. Like, the guy understood very, very deeply that I am in a place that gave me so many freedoms and allowed me to get to the position that I am in that would not have been possible elsewhere. They deserve, I should be giving back to them in some way. I should give back to my people. I should give back to my community. I should give back to my country. And he took his wealth and he fucking did things that change normal people's lives, that make it better, that give people an opportunity to become him so that they can do the same fucking thing for the next generation. And this is something that we do not have in our society at all. We have profits. We have no overarching goals. The American people we don't have a great thing to rally behind. We're not all waiting to go to space. We're not all cheering behind a new national monument like Mount Rushmore. We don't have big aspirations. What happened to our fucking aspirations? What happened to caring about where we are and what we're leaving and what people are going to do after us? Yeah, man, we're only here for a little bit of time, but if the world cares about us, we're supposed to give a shit about the world too. So if you believe in Sam's anti-nihilistic take earlier that the world cares about you, you have to give a shit about the world too. And the world could mean the whole world, but what it really should mean in this context is fucking America and your people and your neighbors. Like, there's a sense that's been totally lost, I think, as time goes on, or maybe just as we get older and we're not in education anymore as much. I don't know what it is, but we've lost a big sense of community and a big sense of we are 50 states worth of Americans. Instead, a lot of the time, it feels like Texas is yelling at California, and California hates Florida, and Florida hates whatever. We're all fighting with each other when really we are all on the same. We should all be on a very similar page. It's not that hard to come together. It felt like we used to be together, and we need our leaders to bring this kind of back to us, because the people themselves are not going to be able to do it. They need someone in charge who vehemently believes this and will force it down their throats that this is the way it has to fucking be, or we're screwed. And Elon could be that person. Elon could be that guy, but he's not.
You caught me for my nightly cigar and bonfire. What, you don't do the same thing?
Going hand in hand with that last point, reality is that hundreds of thousands of kids are graduating with massive amounts of student debt, and they're being looked over by people who are not us. Apple may win, Google may win, but America is worse off. This point is the pinnacle, I believe, of Sam's entire video. I think this is the message that he's trying to get across to Elon the most, is we have a very large issue in this country where we believe that winning is stock prices going up, watch the green line go up, make sure the numbers get bigger. And that is not what makes a country great. The efficacy of college and of education in general in the U.S. has become a really weird talking point, right? For some reason, conservatives are kind of against education. But digressing that, growing up, college was not seen as an option for my generation, I don't believe. I, at least personally, and almost everybody I know, college was the only way out. It's very odd to see the inverse now, where college is seen as a scam or as indoctrination. The reality of us being passed up by foreigners, that sounds, again, racist at the top of the point. But if you think of it to look past just skin color, it's not about that. It's about the American people. There really are plenty of qualified graduates who are being passed up because the system in place does not have any incentive for business owners to hire American. There is no reason to hire domestic if you can get it cheaper somewhere else. Everything comes down to just a labor cost number on a spreadsheet. And this is the main issue. The fact that we're paying other people in of itself, that's not racist. But the reason that we're paying other people is because none of our leaders, none of our innovators, none of our business runners have any of this American pride that we used to have. And I think it's a really poignant point that that's something that we should be really aiming to bring back up in our community. I'm not sure if that's through education. That I grew up thinking, I learned everything about how good America was and how great we could be and why it's important to think about our fellow countrymen as brothers and shit like that. That was all things that was poured into me in school. And somehow over the last 20 years, education just in general has become kind of an enemy of the conservative party. If the conservative party is also for this great America, then what's the deal there?
Are they all retards? You work at a sub sandwich shop. You couldn't invent PayPal. If you really believe that these people are all retards, then you have no place in the discourse going on about the future of this country. You are just a computer guy. And I don't think you really believe that. I hope to God that you don't.
Respecting Homer Simpson. This is the most important section of the video. If everyone on Fent, if everyone working at the mall, and if everyone working in every restaurant is retarded, does being beaten down by big pharma or inflation or higher taxation, does that make one an idiot? Does that make one retarded? If you believe this, and this is targeted as a point at Elon, if you believe this, you have no place in the discourse about the future of the country because you are not a leader. If you don't have grace and respect for the Homer Simpson retards that make your dreams possible, then telling you that you are not a leader is going to hurt you more than telling you to go fuck yourself. Sam addresses Elon directly for one of the very few times in the video, for a video, pointed at him. But it's a very, very pressing point. And the direct call out just showcases how important this is to Sam. This is a very big deal. And it concisely elicits a lot of empathy for the American people who believe that Elon should be looking to care about what they want. And Elon should care about what they want because he just garnered all of their support. They are the people that got him so close to people in power. And so to be in such a position of power with as much influence as he does, if it comes to light that he really does believe that all Americans are stupid, that the average everyday guy has no meaning or impact on him, then if that came to light, he would lose all of his support almost overnight. The fact that people, even after being, shunned by him and banned by him and them having this disagreement over the H1Bs, people are still willing to forgive him, to let him be wrong and learn that he needs to care about these people. And if he decides that he does care, then they will take him back in with open arms. But if he doesn't, then he's done for. The Americans aren't good enough sentiment that Vivek attached to himself with his kind of mask-off tweets. It's also attached itself to Elon. And whether or not he believes in that, it needs to be addressed because it's being attached that he does believe in that. So if that's not true, then, the record needs to be set right. How posterity will look upon your works is directly related to your attitude towards the American people, is a perfect summation of the argument and all of the pleas for Elon to address those that are angry in his base, to try and attempt to, let them forgive him. Sam is trying to make sure that Elon understands that, yes, you fucked up. Yes, this is a big deal, but you haven't lost everybody yet. You don't need to just ban everyone that disagrees with you. You can take a step back for a second and think, if so many of the people that are supposed to support me and believe in me are upset over this, then maybe it's worth being upset over. And if you're not going to address it, then you're not here for the American people. And if you're not here for the American people, then your usefulness is over for us.
The claim that we can't find talented people here is nonsense. That's dishonest. The claim should be that we can't afford to pay talented people enough, or we don't want to.
We all know what an American is, and all of these paragraph-long definitions and high-minded ideas are just propaganda. Using the phrase, what an American is, instead of a phrase like what an American looks like, is a very, very important distinction, which greatly lowers the chance that there's some sort of sinister hidden message in this, okay? I saw a lot of people that took this and read it as being what a white American is. And that's not It's not what he's trying to say. The rhetoric isn't very specific. It's not very pointed. It's trying to get everyone to be feeling cohesive, like as an audience. You know what an American is, okay? You listening to me right now, whether you're white or black or Chinese, if you have been living in America since you were 6, if you grew up here, if you've been here for, 10 years, you understand just by looking around and talking to people, and you know that most of the people around you have a base system in their mind of like values and beliefs and like ways the world should work that are uniquely American and uniquely similar to yours. And that feeling of connectedness is what Sam is trying to say that we're going to be missing, or we are currently missing. And while I do believe we're probably in a little bit of a crisis of it, I don't know if it's because of foreign and immigration policy. This is the closest thing that the video gets to having a call to arms, really. And all it's trying to do is get people to feel empowered to like stand together and get involved and make sure that their opinions are heard on messages and on issues. And there's such a like genuine point of caring there that is overshadowed by some of the arguments that this is supposed to be like a dog whistle or like this is bad messaging. This is incredible messaging. This is how you get people that even if they don't believe with everything you're saying, they're going to believe this. They're going to understand this. And the fact that he brings this up and then seems very genuine in his care and in the importance that this would bring, like it's incredible messaging. And so the fact that I saw so much kind of hate towards this and like worry that this was supposed to be like, this was one of those poisoned apple messages. This is not a poisoned apple message.
The site, I'll say that.
Would you like to hear some caroling?
No.
Why?
Because I don't think you guys can sing.
Wrapping up Sam's video, it closes again on a small discussion about the H1B Visa situation, and it argues that people using this system are essentially hiring slaves because they can't choose to leave their jobs, because once they have one of these jobs, their job is tied directly to their housing. Their visa means that if they are not working, then they cannot be here. He continues to analyze some comments that these billionaires and economists and shit have about the Indian workforce, praising them for their long hours and their dedication. And it comes back to a question that we asked earlier about why are we competing? This time not with China, but this time with India. Why do we want to work 80 hours a week? Why does that show dedication? Why should anybody work for 80 hours a week? It's like we're just trying to drive ourselves to the bottom to compete with other countries who are not in as well-off positions as us in the first place. The American public is led to believe that they have to have a lower quality of life constantly, like over and over again. And it doesn't matter if it's because of China. It doesn't matter if it's because of India. It doesn't matter who it's because of. All that matters is that there's a reason for prices to go, for wages to go down and prices to go up. It only matters to corporations that they can find new people to compete with so that Americans will feel okay being forced into worse working conditions or worse environments. This core concept of kind of trying to move away from the corporate profit idea and more back into the dream style projects that defined generations of Americans, that is the goal. Like, corporations are lying to you, and they're saying that they need to reach the goal of lowering costs. America is not their home. It's just where they do business. And America is our home. They have no incentive or reason to be loyal to us, but our leaders could. Our leaders should. And if our leaders are someone like Elon, who also runs a lot of business, then he needs to understand that he should adopt this like dream project kind of mentality, where if you have a happy, sustainable workforce, you're going to be better off in the long term, and everyone's going to be happier off than if you're just looking at your bottom dollar.
What inspires me is teaching African refugees how to program JavaScript. What inspires me is finding out how to use maglev trains to get resources to the moon. These are the challenges that tomorrow's going to face.
I hope you've enjoyed this video and exploring some of the ideas that were put forth by Sam and some of my thoughts on the matter. While first watching the video, I felt extremely strongly that I was watching someone and something that was crafted with genuine care, and that this guy really has a vision for what he thinks America should look like, okay? And that vision doesn't sound really all that different from my own. And it probably doesn't sound all that different from your own. I've had very little exposure to Sam Hyde prior to this, and I knew of some of his sketches and his clips, and I just thought he was a funny guy. But with this, he has cemented himself in my mind as someone with a lot more to offer the world than just comedy. He's able to cut through so much of the minutia and the nuance and the bullshit and the fear of talking about serious, difficult topics like race, and like nationalism and the relationship between the two, and how everything is just all parts of our government and our corporations and our private and public life. Everything is just so interconnected. And I was very surprised to see throughout the backlash and, among the support, there were all these white supremacist and Nazi claims. Because from this video, which I hope has been shown through example, I tried to identify moments where there might be dog whistling, or there might be poisoned messaging, or there might be bad rhetoric. And even when I was looking with a critical eye towards these underlying messages, I found very little to support these claims. This video brought up a lot of topics that I rarely, if ever, thought about, and I'm sure that a majority of American people haven't really taken a lot of time to think about or care about. And creating this response and having to really sit with myself and write this out and think, am I confident saying this is what I think right now enough to put it out into the world? And it's really, really hard, man. It's very, very difficult. You don't know if you're going to say something you regret. You don't know if you're going to say something that you change your mind on and no one's ever going to know or ever see. You don't know if you screwed up one little fact here or there and someone's going to crucify you for it, when really at the end of the day, you just watched a 45-minute video with a lot of opinions. Please don't tell me, don't get stuck on the fact that I missed one thing 6 minutes in. It's a very difficult not argument. It's a very just difficult thing to wrap your head around, the fact that I watched something, I had to think a lot, and I'm not sure if what I'm saying is right or wrong, or if it's even what I believe, but it sounds like it's what I think. And to be able to put that out in the world, and to have done it in such a confident, strong, very rhetorically well done and well produced video like that, it shows a lot of intentionality and it shows a lot of care. And I don't believe that someone with such simple and like vile views as trying to spout Nazism would be able to create a product that is so genuinely thought-provoking and addresses a lot of topics that are so far outside of things affected really by like white nationalism. There is always going to be people who bring it up when we talk about American nationalism, just given our history and given slavery and given, you know, police brutality and like everything. Nothing's perfect still. We're far from that. But I do believe that we are far from a Nazi regime, and I really hope that we're all able to take from this video just the sense that like a lot of our conversations have way more depth than we're used to giving them. Things are not just black and white, just very simple. People are not just economic units. People are not just one opinion. So even if you have some issues with some of the things that Sam did say in this or has said before or has done before, there needs to be a realization that at the end of the day, he's got to vote, I've got to vote, and we're all voting on things that affect all of us. So even if we disagree on a bunch of stuff, we have to learn how to talk to each other and understand each other and try to find a way to just get to the bottom of things where we don't have, you know, two sides who never, ever are able to get anything done. And I believe that this is an issue that could spring a lot of people into being more politically active or politically motivated. It's been a long time since we really had a strong sense of national pride in this country. And whether or not we're starting our national pride conversation with something a little white supremacist leaning is one that it's a topic you could discuss, but it's not one that I see a lot of merit in coming from Sam. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I know it's been a long video. I know that there's going to be some issues, I'm sure. I already have addressed that, you know, some of the points are a little circular. Some of the logic, sometimes we get a little lost in the sauce of talking and recording. And I hope that you guys understand that that's something that we'll be able to work through and get a little bit better as we go on. This is, of course, like my first video. So, yeah. Any comments, criticism, concerns, any thoughts on any of the topics that we covered here, I would love to see your comments and your thoughts and opinions and shit like that. Don't forget to hit sub, go to the Substack, we have that going, go to the Patreon, we're getting that set up, and yeah, hopefully this can be a place where we're able to talk a lot about these kinds of subjects, you know, the hard-hitting things that you're able to avoid if you're really trying, you know, but it's conversations that I believe we should really be having. Thank you guys for watching.